The September heat in Phoenix was unbearable, even at 7 in the evening. I stood on our back patio, watching my mom arrange the last of the decorations while Dad fired up the grill. 21 years old today, and honestly, I wasn't expecting much. The past few birthdays had been modest, to put it kindly. "Ethan, honey, can you help me move this table?" Mom called out, her voice strained as she struggled with our heavy wooden patio table. I jogged over, grabbing one end. "Mom, you know you don't have to go through all this trouble. A simple dinner would have been fine." She gave me that look, the one that said she was trying harder than usual. Nonsense. 21 is a big deal. Besides, Olivia drove all the way down from Flagstaff for this. My sister had indeed made the 2-hour drive from Northern Arizona University, where she was finishing her senior year in business. At 19, Olivia had always been the golden child: straight A's, student government, sorority president. Everything seemed to come naturally to her, while I struggled through community college, working nights at a local auto shop to pay for classes. The backyard looked decent enough. String lights hung between the mesquite trees, casting a warm glow over our small gathering. A few neighbors had come by, along with my buddy Ryan from work and my girlfriend Casey. Nothing fancy, but it felt genuine. "All right, everyone, gather around," Dad announced, his voice booming across the yard. He was still wearing his construction company polo, sleeves rolled up, showing the tan lines that marked 25 years of Arizona construction work. Time for the main event. I felt that familiar knot in my stomach. Birthdays in our family had become increasingly awkward over the past few years. Ever since Dad's construction business hit some rough patches and Mom had to take on extra shifts at the hospital, money had been tight. Really tight. Olivia bounced over, her blonde hair catching the light. She always looked put together, even in casual clothes. Designer jeans that probably cost more than my weekly paycheck. A cute top that somehow stayed wrinkle-free despite the drive. She hugged me tight. "Happy birthday, big brother," she said, though technically I was only 18 months older. "Thanks, Liv. Glad you could make it." Dad cleared his throat dramatically. "Now, as you all know, 21 is a milestone birthday. The age when you truly become an adult." He paused, glancing at Mom, who nodded encouragingly. "So tonight we have some very special gifts for both our children." "Both?" I raised an eyebrow. It wasn't Olivia's birthday. Mom stepped forward, holding 2 envelopes, one significantly thicker than the other. My heart sank a little. Envelope gifts usually meant gift cards or cash, and judging by the size difference, mine was going to be the smaller disappointment. "Olivia, sweetheart, you've been working so hard at school, and we know how difficult it's been for you to get around campus and to your internship." Oh no. I could see where this was heading. Dad pulled out a set of keys, the Honda logo catching the patio light. "We wanted to get you something that would help with your final year and beyond." The small crowd cheered as Olivia squealed, covering her mouth with her hands. "A car." They bought her a car. Not a new one, but from the shine I could see in the driveway, it was definitely newer than the beat-up Toyota Corolla I'd been driving since high school when it actually ran. "Oh my God. Mom, Dad, I can't believe this." Olivia hugged them both, tears streaming down her face. "This is incredible." I plastered on a smile and clapped along with everyone else, but inside I was doing calculations. A decent used Honda probably ran them at least 12 grand, maybe more. Where had that money come from? More importantly, why now when they'd been complaining about money for months? "Ethan," Dad said, turning to me with the thinner envelope. "Son, I know this might seem a bit practical, but we got you something we thought you could really use." I opened the envelope, already knowing it wasn't going to be car keys. Inside was a 3-pack of work socks and a gift card to AutoZone for $50. $50. And socks. The yard went quiet for a moment, the kind of awkward silence that makes everyone suddenly very interested in their drinks. Casey squeezed my arm supportively and Ryan coughed uncomfortably. "These are great, Dad. Really practical. Thank you." The words came out robotically, but I meant them. $50 would help with my car repairs, and I genuinely needed new work socks. But the contrast was stark. "We know it's not much, honey," Mom said quietly, stepping closer. "But things have been tight and we thought." "It's perfect, Mom." "Really?" I forced enthusiasm into my voice. "I can always use socks, and you know how much I've been spending on car parts." But even as I said it, I couldn't help but wonder. If money was so tight, where had they found $12,000 for Olivia's car? And why hadn't they at least tried to balance things out? Even a cheap used motorcycle would have cost less and shown some effort at equality. Olivia seemed to sense the tension. "Ethan, you know, if you ever need to borrow the car." "It's fine, Liv. Really. Enjoy it." And I meant that too. It It wasn't her fault our parents played favorites. Just as Dad was about to suggest we move on to cake, the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," Mom said, looking confused. "We're not expecting anyone else." She disappeared into the house and we could hear muffled conversation from the front door. After a few minutes, she returned with a man in his 60s, wearing a crisp navy suit despite the heat. He looked out of place in our casual backyard gathering, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my monthly salary. "Everyone, this is Mr. Harrison," Mom said, her voice strangely tight. He needs to speak with Ethan." The man stepped forward, extending his hand. "Ethan Mitchell? I'm Robert Harrison, attorney with Harrison, Wells & Associates. I apologize for the timing, but I have some time-sensitive information regarding your inheritance." The word, inheritance, hung in the air like smoke. Every conversation stopped. Casey's hand tightened on my arm. "I'm sorry, inheritance?" I managed to say. "There must be some mistake. I don't have any relatives who—" "From your great-aunt Margaret Whitmore," Mr. Harrison continued calmly. "Your grandfather's sister. She passed away 3 months ago, and we've been trying to locate the beneficiaries of her estate." I looked at my parents, who had gone completely pale. Dad's jaw was clenched in a way I recognized, the same expression he got when contractors didn't pay on time. "I've never heard of a Margaret Whitmore," I said slowly. "That's not uncommon. Ms. Whitmore was estranged from the family for many decades. However, she was very specific in her will about wanting to provide for her great-nephew's education and future." Mr. Harrison opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Mr. Mitchell, you are the sole beneficiary of a trust fund established in your name. The current value is approximately $2.7 million. Someone dropped a glass. I think it was Casey. The number didn't compute. 2.7 million. Million. With an M. That's impossible," I stammered. "I assure you it's quite real. Ms. Whitmore made her fortune in technology investments in the 1990s. She never married, never had children, and specifically wanted her wealth to go to family members who were working to better themselves through education and honest work." I could feel everyone staring at me. The auto shop worker with grease under his fingernails and a community college transcript that was more C's than A's. Millionaire. "The trust becomes fully accessible when you turn 21, Mr. Harrison continued. "Which, according to my records, is today." Dad stepped forward, his face red. "Now wait just a minute. If there was family money, why weren't we informed? Why wasn't this handled through us?" Mr. Harrison's expression remained professional but cool. Ms. Whitmore was very specific about her wishes. The trust was to be managed independently and transferred directly to Ethan upon his 21st birthday. No parental involvement was requested or required. Mom sank into a patio chair, her face ghost white. "Margaret," she whispered. "Oh my God, Margaret. You knew her?" I asked, turning to stare at my mother. She was your grandfather's younger sister. They had a falling out when your father and I got married. She disapproved of our engagement, said we were too young, that your father wasn't good enough for the family." Mom's voice was barely audible. She cut off all contact. "We thought she'd died years ago." The pieces started clicking into place. The sudden car for Olivia. The practical gifts for me. They knew. Somehow they knew this was coming. "Mr. Harrison," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "when exactly did you first contact my parents about this inheritance?" The lawyer checked his notes. "My first letter was sent 6 weeks ago, followed by a certified letter 4 weeks ago, and a final notice 2 weeks ago. Standard procedure when we can't reach the beneficiary directly. 6 weeks ago. Right around the time Olivia started talking about needing a car for her internship. I looked at my parents, really looked at them, and saw the guilt written across their faces. They knew. They'd known for 6 weeks that I was about to inherit nearly $3 million, and they decided to spend what was probably their last available cash on a car for my sister while giving me socks. The birthday party continued around us, but everything had changed. The string lights seemed brighter, the conversations more distant, and the taste of betrayal sat bitter in my mouth. Mr. Harrison was explaining something about paperwork and bank transfers, but I could barely focus. All I could think about was the envelope in my hand with $50 and a 3-pack of tube socks, while my sister's new Honda sat gleaming in the driveway. "I'll need you to come to my office tomorrow to complete the paperwork," Mr. Harrison was saying. "Shall we say 10 a.m.? I nodded numbly. Tomorrow my entire life would change. Tonight I was learning exactly where I stood with my family. As the lawyer packed up his briefcase and headed back through the house, the party slowly resumed, but the energy was different. Conversations were hushed, people kept glancing at me, and my parents looked like they wanted to disappear. Casey squeezed my hand. Holy shit, Ethan. $3 million. Ryan whistled low. Dude, you're rich. Like actually rich. But all I could focus on was Olivia's car keys, glinting in the patio light, and the growing certainty that nothing in my family would ever be the same again. I didn't sleep. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw dollar signs or Mr. Harrison's business card, or the look on my parents' faces when they realized I knew they'd been hiding this from me. By 6 a.m. I gave up on sleep entirely. I threw on yesterday's clothes and headed to the kitchen, where I found Mom already sitting at our small breakfast table, still in her robe, cradling a coffee mug like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Morning, I said quietly, not sure if I was ready for this conversation. Oh, Ethan. Her eyes were red-rimmed, like she hadn't slept either. Honey, we need to talk. I poured myself coffee from the pot she'd made strong enough to wake the dead, the way she always made it when she was stressed. Yeah, I figured we would. Dad's heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway, and soon he appeared in the doorway, looking like he'd aged 5 years overnight. His usually perfect construction worker posture was slumped, shoulders defeated. Son, he started then stopped. Started again. About last night. You knew. It wasn't a question. You've known for 6 weeks that I was going to inherit almost $3 million, and you still decided to buy Liv a car and give me socks. The words hung heavy in the morning air. Mom set down her coffee cup with shaking hands. It's not that simple, Dad said, settling into his usual chair across from me. We didn't know if it was real. These inheritance scam calls happen all the time. Except this wasn't a phone call, was it? This was certified letters from a legitimate law firm. Mom looked up at me, her eyes pleading. We were going to tell you. We wanted to make sure it wasn't some cruel joke first. So you thought you'd spend your last money on Olivia, just in case I was about to become a millionaire? The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. That makes it worse, not better? Dad's face flushed. Now you listen here, young man. We've sacrificed everything for you kids. Your mother works double shifts, I've been breaking my back for 25 years. To buy my sister a car while giving me socks. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the linoleum. Do you understand how that felt? Standing there in front of everyone, opening an envelope with $50 while she gets a Honda? We thought the money would change things, Mom whispered. We thought maybe you'd understand why we gave Olivia something special while we still could. The logic was so backwards it made my head spin. You thought I'd be okay with being treated like the family disappointment because I was secretly rich? You're not a disappointment, Dad said firmly. You're just different from Olivia. Different? There it was. The word that had defined my entire childhood. Olivia was the academic star, the social butterfly, the one with the plan. I was different. The one who struggled in school, who preferred working with his hands, who chose community college over university. Different how exactly? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Dad shifted uncomfortably. You know what I mean. Olivia's got her whole future mapped out. Business degree, internship at that marketing firm, plans for graduate school. She's going places. And I'm not. That's not what I said. It's what you meant. I grabbed my coffee mug and headed for the back door. I'm going for a drive. Ethan, wait, Mom called after me, but I was already outside. My beat-up Corolla took 3 tries to start, which felt ironically appropriate. In a few hours I'd have access to enough money to buy a dozen new cars, but right now I was stuck with a vehicle that might die any moment. I drove aimlessly through Phoenix's grid-patterned streets, past strip malls and subdivisions that all looked the same. The morning sun was already brutal, promising another scorching day. I ended up at South Mountain Park, parking in the empty lot and staring out at the desert landscape. My phone buzzed with texts. Casey asking if I was okay. Ryan wanting to know if I was really rich. 3 missed calls from Olivia. I called Casey back. Ethan? Where are you? I've been worried sick. I'm fine. Just needed some air. I explained about the morning conversation with my parents. Jesus, that's messed up, she said when I finished. I mean, I get why they might have been confused about the inheritance thing, but treating you differently because they thought you were getting money? That's backwards. Casey had a way of cutting through nonsense that I appreciated. She worked as a veterinary assistant while taking night classes in accounting, so she understood the struggle of working while trying to better yourself. I keep thinking about all the times they've made it clear that Olivia is the success story, I said. Honor roll certificates on the fridge, bragging about her grades to the neighbors, talking about her bright future, while treating my community college classes like a hobby. But now you're the one with the bright future, Casey pointed out. How do you think that makes them feel? I hadn't considered that angle. Like they backed the wrong horse? Maybe. Or maybe they're realizing they've been measuring success wrong. My phone buzzed with another call. Olivia again. I should probably talk to her, I said. Yeah, probably. But Ethan? Don't let them make you feel guilty for being hurt. What they did was wrong even if they had reasons. After we hung up, I finally called Olivia back. Oh, thank God, she said immediately. I've been calling for hours. Where are you? South Mountain. Thinking. Can I come find you? We need to talk. 20 minutes later, I watched her new Honda pull into the parking lot. Even from a distance, it looked so much nicer than my car that it was almost comical. She got out wearing designer sunglasses and what looked like a workout outfit that cost more than I made in a week. Hey, she said, settling onto the bench next to me. Hey. We sat in silence for a while, watching early morning hikers starting their trek up the mountain trail. I didn't know, she said finally. About the inheritance. I swear to you, Ethan, I had no idea. I believe you. And I did. Olivia might have been the favorite, but she wasn't manipulative. When they told me about the car, they said it was because I'd been working so hard, and they'd managed to save up some money from Dad's latest project. And you didn't question where they suddenly got $12,000? She was quiet for a long moment. I should have. I was just so excited, and I guess I didn't want to question it too closely. That was honest, at least. The socks thing was really shitty, she continued. Even before I knew about the money, I felt terrible about it. The difference was so obvious. It wasn't your fault. No, but I could have said something. I could have offered to share the car immediately, or suggested we take some of the money they spent on mine to get you something better. I looked at her sitting there, genuinely remorseful, and felt some of my anger fade. It wasn't Olivia's fault our parents had been playing favorites for years. What did they tell you this morning? I asked. That they were trying to protect me from disappointment if the inheritance fell through. That they wanted to give me something special while they still could, because once you got the money, everything would change. Everything will change. Yeah. She pulled off her sunglasses and I could see she'd been crying. Ethan, I'm scared. Scared of what? That you'll hate us. That money will ruin our family. That you'll decide you don't need any of us anymore. The vulnerability in her voice surprised me. Olivia had always seemed so confident, so sure of her place in the world. I don't hate you, Liv. I'm hurt and confused, but I don't hate you. What about Mom and Dad? That was harder to answer. I don't know. I feel like I don't know who they are anymore. Like maybe I never really knew. They love you, Ethan. They're scared too. Dad keeps talking about how he never finished high school, how he's just a construction worker, and now his son is going to be richer than he'll ever be. Money doesn't make me better than him. You know that and I know that, but I don't think he knows that. My phone alarm went off 9:30 a.m. Time to head to the lawyer's office. I have to go, I said, standing up. Paperwork to sign, apparently. Can I come with you? For support? I considered it. Part of me wanted to face this alone, to process what was happening without family complications. But another part of me was terrified of walking into that office and having my entire life change in the span of a signature. Yeah, I said finally. I'd like that. As we walked back to our cars, Olivia caught my arm. Ethan? Whatever happens with this money, whatever you decide to do, I hope we can still be close. I hope I don't lose my brother. You won't lose me, Liv. But things are going to be different. I know. I'm just hoping different doesn't mean distant. I looked at her standing there in the desert heat, designer clothes and new car keys, but with genuine fear in her eyes about losing her family. Maybe we were both about to find out who we really were underneath the roles we'd been playing. Come on, I said. Let's go see what $2.7 million actually looks like. Harrison, Wells and Associates occupied the top 3 floors of a glass building in downtown Phoenix's financial district. The lobby had marble floors and artwork that probably cost more than my parents' annual income. I felt underdressed in jeans and a polo shirt, but Olivia had insisted I looked fine. Mr. Mitchell? The receptionist, a woman in her 30s with perfectly styled hair, smiled professionally. Mr. Harrison is ready for you. Robert Harrison's office was intimidating in that understated wealthy way, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, leather furniture that looked like it cost more than a car, and law books that were definitely more for show than actual use. Ethan, thank you for coming. And Ms. Mitchell, I presume? He shook Olivia's hand. I'm glad you brought support. These situations can be overwhelming. He wasn't kidding. The conference table was covered with documents, each stack held down by paperweights that probably had their own insurance policies. Before we begin the paperwork, I thought you might want to understand more about your great-aunt and why she structured the trust this way. I nodded, settling into a leather chair that was more comfortable than my bed. Margaret Whitmore was an interesting woman. Born in 1935, grew up during the Depression. She was brilliant with numbers and had an intuitive understanding of technology trends that served her well when she moved to California in the 1960s. Mr. Harrison pulled out a thick file folder. She invested early in companies that became household names: Apple, Microsoft, Google. But she was also extremely frugal and lived modestly her entire life. She died in a small apartment in Palo Alto, surrounded by financial documents and very little else. Why did she cut off contact with the family? Olivia asked. From what I understand, there was significant disapproval when your grandfather married your grandmother. Margaret felt he was marrying beneath himself, a prejudice that was unfortunately common in that era. When your parents married young, it reinforced her belief that the family lacked proper judgment about the future. The irony wasn't lost on me. Great-Aunt Margaret had disapproved of my parents' marriage, and now her money was highlighting the cracks in their judgment about my future. She spent years researching family members, trying to understand who might benefit most from her wealth. She was particularly interested in family members who were working to improve themselves through education or honest labor. That's why it went to Ethan specifically, Olivia said. Not to the family in general. Exactly. She felt that young people who were willing to work while pursuing education showed the kind of character she wanted to reward. Mr. Harrison smiled at me. Working at an auto shop while attending community college qualified in her mind. It was surreal. I'd spent my whole life feeling like the family underachiever, and apparently that had made me worthy of inheriting millions from a relative I'd never met. Now, let's talk about the practical aspects. Mr. Harrison began spreading out documents. The trust is structured to encourage continued education and responsible financial management. You have immediate access to $100,000 for living expenses and education. $100,000. Available today. More money than I'd ever imagined having. The remaining funds are invested in a diversified portfolio that's been averaging about 8% annual growth. You can access larger amounts with proper justification: education, starting a business, buying a home, but there are safeguards against frivolous spending. What kind of safeguards? A board of trustees must approve any single expenditure over $50,000. The board consists of myself, a financial advisor, and interestingly, someone Margaret designated as a character reference, someone who knew you personally but wasn't family. I frowned. Who would that be? She never met me. Mr. Harrison consulted his notes. A Mr. James Rodriguez, your supervisor at Morrison's Auto Repair. Jimmy? I was stunned. How did she even know about Jimmy? She hired a private investigator to research potential beneficiaries. Mr. Rodriguez was interviewed about your work ethic and character. According to her notes, his recommendation was glowing. Jimmy Rodriguez had been my boss for 2 years. A former Marine who ran the shop with military precision but treated his employees fairly. He'd been teaching me advanced diagnostics and encouraging me to consider automotive engineering programs. I had no idea he thought that highly of me. Margaret left specific instructions about this, Mr. Harrison continued. She believed that someone who worked with you daily would have better insight into your character than family members who might be biased by either favoritism or disappointment. The paperwork took 2 hours. Bank account numbers, investment portfolios, tax implications, and dozens of signatures. By the time we finished, my hand was cramping and my head was spinning. The initial $100,000 will be available in your new account by tomorrow morning, Mr. Harrison said, shaking my hand. Welcome to financial independence, Ethan. Use it wisely. Walking out of that building felt like stepping into an alternate reality. The same Phoenix sun, the same streets, the same sounds of traffic and construction. But everything was different because I was different. So, Olivia said as we stood on the sidewalk outside the building, what now? I have no idea. The honest answer. I keep thinking I should feel different, but I just feel scared. Scared of what? Of screwing it up. Of becoming someone I don't like. Of losing everyone I care about because they start treating me differently. Olivia was quiet for a moment. Do you want to get lunch? Somewhere we can talk without Mom and Dad hovering? I nodded, and we drove to a Mexican restaurant near ASU's downtown campus. The kind of place we'd gone to as kids when Dad got paid for a big job and wanted to celebrate. Red vinyl booths, chips and salsa that came automatically, and prices that wouldn't break the bank. Okay, Olivia said after we ordered. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Which elephant? There are several. Mom and Dad. What are you going to do? I'd been dreading this conversation, but it needed to happen. I don't know, Liv. I keep going back and forth between being furious and feeling sorry for them. Why sorry for them? Because they just found out their son who they thought was going nowhere is suddenly richer than they'll ever be. That's got to mess with your head. The server brought our drinks and I stared into my Coke like it held answers. But that doesn't excuse treating you like crap for your entire life, Olivia said firmly. I've been thinking about it all morning and I realized something that makes me really uncomfortable. What's that? I don't think this favoritism thing is new, Ethan. I think it's been going on for years and I just never noticed because I was the one benefiting from it. That was a hard truth but probably accurate. Think about it, she continued. When I wanted to go to ASU instead of community college, they found the money for tuition and housing. When you wanted to take automotive classes, they made you pay for them yourself because trade school isn't that expensive. They had more money then. Did they? Or did they just prioritize differently? Olivia leaned forward. When I crashed Dad's truck junior year, they got it fixed and didn't say a word. When your car broke down, you've been fixing it yourself because you need to learn responsibility. Each example hit like a small punch. I'd rationalized all of them at the time, but hearing them laid out like that made the pattern impossible to ignore. The Christmas presents, the graduation gifts, the way they talk about our futures when people ask. Olivia's voice was getting quieter. Ethan, I think they've been treating you as an afterthought for years. So what am I supposed to do with that information? I don't know. But I don't think you should pretend it didn't happen just because you have money now. Our food arrived, but neither of us seemed particularly hungry. We picked at our plates while processing the weight of the conversation. Can I ask you something? Olivia said finally. Sure. What do you actually want to do? Like with your life? If money wasn't an issue? It was a question I'd never really considered seriously. Money had always been an issue, so dreams felt like luxuries I couldn't afford. I've been thinking about that all morning, I said slowly. I love working on cars, but I'd also like to understand the engineering side better. Maybe automotive engineering or even designing electric vehicle systems. That's specific. Jimmy's been encouraging me to think bigger. He says I have good instincts for diagnostics and problem solving. I paused. Actually, he's been pushing me to consider transferring to ASU's engineering program. And now you can afford it. Yeah. Now I can afford it. The reality was still sinking in. I could quit the night shifts, take classes full-time, maybe even get an apartment closer to campus. That sounds amazing, Ethan. Why don't you sound excited? Because part of me feels guilty about having opportunities one didn't earn, and part of me is worried that everyone will treat me differently now. Olivia reached across the table and grabbed my hand. You did earn it. Great Aunt Margaret didn't give you that money randomly. She researched you, had you investigated, talked to your boss. She gave it to you because of who you are and how you live your life. But what about us? Our family? What happens now? I don't know, she admitted. But I know I don't want to lose my brother because our parents screwed up. You won't lose me. But things need to change, Liv. I can't keep pretending it doesn't hurt to be treated like the consolation prize. So don't pretend. Tell them how you feel. Set boundaries. Use this opportunity to build the relationship you actually want with them. I looked at my sister across the table, realizing that this might be the first truly honest conversation we'd ever had about our family dynamics. What about you? I asked. How do you feel about all this? She was quiet for a long time. Honestly, I feel guilty. And relieved. And terrified. Explain. Guilty because I've been the favorite and I never acknowledged it. Relieved because maybe now the pressure will be off me to be perfect all the time. And terrified because I don't know who I am when I'm not the successful one. It was the most vulnerable I'd ever seen Olivia, and I realized that our family's dynamic had been limiting for both of us just in different ways. You're still successful, Liv. You still earned your grades, got into ASU, landed that internship. My money doesn't change what you've accomplished. But it changes the story, doesn't it? Now you're the one with unlimited possibilities, and I'm just the daughter with student loans and a business degree in a crowded market. I hadn't considered how the inheritance might affect her sense of identity. We'd both been trapped in roles, me as the underachiever, her as the golden child. Now those roles were being challenged. Maybe that's not a bad thing, I said. Maybe we both get to figure out who we actually are instead of who they expected us to be. As we sat in that familiar restaurant, surrounded by the sounds and smells of our childhood, I realized that the money was going to change everything. But maybe, if we handled it right, it could change things for the better. The question was whether my parents would be able to adapt to a new family dynamic, or if they'd cling to old patterns that no longer made sense. Either way, I was done being the afterthought. 3 weeks had passed since the birthday that changed everything, and I was sitting in my first automotive engineering class at Arizona State University, trying to focus on thermodynamics while my phone buzzed with messages from contractors wanting to quote home renovations. The transition to being wealthy had been surreal. I'd paid off my parents' mortgage without telling them first, just handled it through their bank and let them discover it when they got the paid-in-full notice. Mom had cried for an hour. Dad had been silent for 2 days. I'd also bought a reliable truck, nothing flashy, just a well-maintained Ford F-150 that started every time and didn't require constant repairs. The difference in my stress level was remarkable. "Mr. Mitchell?" Professor Kim was looking at me expectantly. "Could you explain the relationship between compression ratio and thermal efficiency?" I snapped back to attention, grateful for the knowledge I'd picked up at the shop. Higher compression ratios generally increase thermal efficiency because they allow more complete fuel combustion, but there's a limit based on fuel octane ratings and the risk of engine knock. Very good. Practical experience? I worked at Morrison's Auto Repair. 2 years of diagnostics and engine rebuilds. Excellent foundation for this program. See me after class. After the lecture, Professor Kim handed me information about an advanced track for students with practical experience. "You might be interested in our partnership with Tesla's design team. They're looking for students who understand both the theoretical and hands-on aspects." Walking across campus afterward, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: genuine excitement about my future. Not anxiety about paying for it, not worry about whether I was smart enough, just pure anticipation for what I might learn and accomplish. My phone rang as I reached the parking garage. "Casey. Hey, how was your first day as a college boy?" she teased. "Good. Weird but good. Professor wants me to consider some advanced program." "That's amazing. See, I told you that you belong there." Casey had been my anchor through all the chaos. She treated me exactly the same as before, still made me split dinner checks, still called me out when I was being an idiot, still rolled her eyes when I got too serious about engine specifications. It was the consistency I needed. "What are you doing tonight?" she asked. "Family dinner. Mom's been planning it for a week. I think it's supposed to be some kind of peace summit." "Good luck with that. Call me after if you need to vent." The family dinner was at Olivia's suggestion. She'd driven down from Flagstaff specifically for this conversation, and had spent the past week mediating between me and our parents via text messages. The plan was simple: clear the air, establish new boundaries, figure out how to move forward. I arrived at the house to find Mom setting the table with her good china, the wedding set that only came out for holidays and special occasions. Dad was grilling steaks on the patio, wearing his best polo shirt. They were both trying so hard it was almost painful to watch. "Smells good out here," I said, joining Dad at the grill. "Your favorite? Medium rare ribeyes." He flipped the steaks with practiced precision. "How were classes?" "Really good. Challenging but good." We stood in awkward silence for a moment, the only sound the sizzle of meat on hot grates. "Son," Dad said finally, "I owe you an apology." I'd been expecting this conversation, but hearing him start it still caught me off guard. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." His voice was firm. "What we did was wrong. The socks, the car for Olivia, keeping the inheritance secret. All of it." I waited, letting him work through what he needed to say. "I've been thinking about it for weeks, and I realized something that makes me ashamed." Dad set down his tongs and looked directly at me. "I've been treating you like a disappointment for so long that I forgot you're not one." The words hit harder than I expected. "Dad." "No, let me finish. You work 40 hours a week while taking classes. You've never been in trouble, never asked us for money you didn't earn, never complained when things were tight. You fix your own car, pay your own bills, treat your girlfriend with respect, and somehow I convinced myself that made you less successful than your sister." He ran a hand through his graying hair. "The truth is, I was scared. Scared that you were going to end up like me, working construction forever, never getting ahead, watching other people's kids surpass you. So instead of supporting your path, I kept pushing you toward what I thought was safer. Construction isn't a failure, Dad. You built a good life for us. But I wanted better for you. And when I couldn't see how community college and auto repair led to better, I wrote you off instead of trusting that you'd figure it out." Mom appeared in the doorway. "Dinner's ready," she said quietly. We gathered around the dining room table, the fancy china making everything feel formal and strange. Olivia had strategically seated herself between me and our parents, as if she could physically mediate the conversation. Before we eat, Mom said, "I want to say something too." She looked directly at me, her eyes already glistening. "Ethan, I failed you as a mother. I let my fears about your future turn into disappointment in your present, and that was unforgivable. Mom, you don't need to." "Yes, I do." She reached across the table and took my hand. A mother is supposed to believe in her children unconditionally. She's supposed to see their potential even when they can't see it themselves. Instead, I compared you to Olivia and found you lacking, when I should have been celebrating who you are. The weight of their apologies was overwhelming. Part of me wanted to accept them immediately and pretend the hurt had never happened. But Casey's voice echoed in my head, "Don't let them rush past the hard part." "I appreciate you both saying that," I said carefully. "But I need you to understand how deep this goes. It's not just about the socks in the car. It's about years of feeling like nothing I did was good enough." I took a breath, gathering courage for what I needed to say. "When I made honor roll at community college, you guys barely acknowledged it. When Olivia made Dean's List, we celebrated with dinner out and Facebook posts. When I got promoted to lead diagnostic tech at the shop, you asked when I was going to get a real job. When Olivia got her internship, you called everyone we know." The examples poured out, years of accumulated small wounds that had shaped how I saw myself in this family. "I understand that you were worried about my future," I continued, "but constantly treating me like I was failing made me believe I actually was failing." Dad's face had gone red, but not with anger, with shame. "Jesus, Ethan. I had no idea. Because you never asked. You decided what success looked like and wrote me off when I didn't fit that picture." Olivia spoke up quietly. "I need to apologize too. I saw all of this happening and never said anything because I benefited from it. That was selfish and cowardly. Liv, you were just." "No, I wasn't just anything. I was old enough to recognize favoritism, and I chose to enjoy it instead of questioning it." She looked at our parents. "And I enabled you guys by never calling out the double standards." The honesty was brutal but necessary. We sat with it for a moment, the weight of years of dysfunction finally acknowledged. "So where do we go from here?" Mom asked finally. "I don't know," I admitted. "I want to have a good relationship with all of you, but it has to be different. It has to be based on who I actually am, not who you wish I was or who you're afraid I might become." "What does that look like practically?" Dad asked. "It means treating my choices and achievements as valid, even if they're different from Olivia's. It means not comparing us constantly. It means asking about my life because you're genuinely interested, not because you're looking for evidence that I'm finally getting my act together. And it means accepting that the money doesn't change who I am fundamentally," I added. "I'm still the same person who likes working with his hands, who prefers practical solutions to theoretical ones, who wants to build things and fix things and make them better." Mom nodded, wiping away tears. "How do we rebuild trust?" "Slowly. With consistency. By showing me that you see me clearly instead of through the lens of your own fears or expectations." Dad cleared his throat. "Can you forgive us? Eventually?" The question hung in the air. Could I forgive them? Did I want to? "I'm working on it," I said finally. "But forgiveness doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen or going back to the way things were. It means building something new." "I'd like that," Olivia said. "Building something new." Over dinner we talked about practical changes. Family gatherings where my achievements got equal recognition. Conversations about my interests that didn't include suggestions for improvement. Acknowledgement that different paths could lead to equally valuable destinations. It wasn't a magic fix. Years of patterns don't change overnight. But it was a start. After dinner, I drove to Casey's apartment to decompress. "How did it go?" she asked, curling up next to me on her second-hand couch. "Hard. Good but hard. I think they finally understand how badly they screwed up." "And how do you feel about that?" "Relieved mostly. And cautiously optimistic." I pulled her closer. "What about you? How are you handling dating a secret millionaire?" She laughed. "You're the least secret millionaire ever. You still drive a truck, live in your same apartment, and argue with me about who pays for pizza." "The truck is new," I pointed out. "The truck is practical. Just like everything else you do." She looked at me seriously. "That's what I love about you, Ethan. The money didn't change your character. It just gave you the freedom to pursue your goals." "Speaking of which," I said, "I've been thinking about something." "What's that?" "Professor Kim told me about this Tesla partnership program. It's competitive, but if I got in, it could lead to some incredible opportunities in electric vehicle design. That sounds perfect for you. It would mean longer hours, more intensive coursework. And there's something else. I paused, suddenly nervous. I've been thinking about buying a house. Nothing crazy, just something with a garage where I can work on projects, maybe space for a home office. That sounds smart. I want you to help me pick it out. Casey went very still. Help you pick out your house? Our house, I said quietly. If you want. I know it's fast and I know the money complicates things, but Casey, you're the only person in my life who sees me clearly. You treat me the same whether I have $50 or 50 million. I can't imagine building a future without you. She was quiet for so long I started to panic. Is this your incredibly unromantic way of asking me to move in with you? She finally asked. Maybe it's my incredibly unromantic way of asking you to build a life with me. She kissed me then, soft and sure. Yes, she said against my lips. To all of it. The house, the life, the future. Yes. Later that night, as Casey slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and thought about everything that had changed since that birthday party 3 weeks ago. The money had been the catalyst, but the real transformation had been deeper. I'd stopped accepting other people's definitions of who I was supposed to be. Great Aunt Margaret had been right to invest in my potential rather than my pedigree. She'd seen something in a community college student working nights at an auto shop that even his own family had missed. Now it was up to me to prove worthy of that faith. My phone buzzed with a text from Jimmy Rodriguez. Heard you're going full-time at ASU. Proud of you, kid. Don't forget us little people when you're designing rocket ships. I smiled and typed back, just cars, Jimmy? But maybe really fast ones. The next message was from Olivia. Thanks for giving us another chance. I know we don't deserve it. And finally, one from Dad. Saw an article about ASU's automotive engineering program. Sounds like they're doing incredible work. Can't wait to hear about your classes. Small gestures, but they meant everything. Evidence that people could change, that families could heal, that money could amplify the best parts of your life instead of corrupting them. I thought about Margaret Whitmore, living modestly in that Palo Alto apartment despite her millions, carefully researching family members she'd never met to find one worthy of her legacy. She'd been betting on my character, not my circumstances. Tomorrow I'd wake up and continue building the life I actually wanted, studying automotive engineering, working toward that Tesla partnership, planning a future with Casey, slowly rebuilding trust with my family. The money had given me choices, but the choices I made would define who I became. As I drifted off to sleep, I made a mental note to visit Margaret's grave sometime soon. I wanted to thank her for seeing potential where others saw problems, for believing in hard work over privilege, for understanding that the best investments aren't always in stocks and bonds. Sometimes they're in people who are willing to work for their dreams, even when no one else believes those dreams are worth pursuing. The socks were still in my drawer, by the way. I'd kept them as a reminder not of disappointment, but of how far I'd come. Sometimes the most practical gifts turn out to be the most valuable ones, just not in the way anyone expected.